If you've ever tried to take the time to learn about cryptocurrency, then you know that it can sometimes feel like walking through an endless barrage of get-rich-quick scams, confusing information, and even corruption. And if you're politically progressive, most of the space can feel downright hostile to your values. The mainstream crypto world is riddled with reactionary economic and political assumptions that can turn off people who would otherwise have a lot to bring. It sucks. But dismissing it entirely might mean missing out on a genuinely interesting and useful technology. There are real applications of blockchains that can be used to help achieve progressive goals. For example, having financial tools that are resistant to state and corporate oppression. Infrastructure for collective governance against a legal system that is hostile towards labor unions and cooperatives, as well as privacy-preserving technologies and so much more. The problem really is being able to separate the wheat from the chaff. So how do you navigate this territory without getting scammed or falling for misguided criticisms? In this video, I want to share 5 essential heuristics, basically mental shortcuts, that can help you navigate crypto territory. Heuristic number 1, get the basics right. In crypto, knowledge is power. It's so important to know the basics. I can't tell you the amount of times that I've avoided a scam or making a mistake simply because I knew the basic mechanisms for how a blockchain actually worked. Having that foundation matters because it helps you spot whenever someone is trying to confuse you with jargon or simply doesn't have any idea of what they're talking about. And trust me, there's both in this space. If you're just starting out, then I can recommend my website where we have specific Blockchain 101 content to help you learn these foundations. There's an article series, there are recordings, and there's even a glossary to help you learn some of these terms that get thrown out in the crypto world that you wouldn't otherwise hear. So that should be able to make a lot of other information that you would come across more digestible. Additionally, I authored a book called Blockchain Radicals: How Capitalism Ruined Crypto and How to Fix It, that dives deeper into how these technologies work while acknowledging the bad parts of it as well. And here's the thing, most books out there are either written by crypto libertarians who don't want to acknowledge a lot of the bad things that are out there, or by those who are completely dismissive of the entire thing. This book is meant for people who want to acknowledge both. They want to know what are the things that can be useful for them from a progressive point of view, and also be able to avoid the more negative aspects of the industry. You can find a link in my show notes where you can find a spot where you can get your own copy. There's both physical, digital, and audiobooks available. Heuristic number 2. Remember that this is a permissionless system where people can profit off of your attention and, of course, your money. The honest truth is that the crypto industry is cringe. Like, honestly, it's embarrassing. But that cringe exists kind of for a reason. When you combine a world with existing financial desperation, with social media algorithms, and with unregulated free markets on blockchains, then you have a recipe for disaster and a place where people are incentivized to manipulate others. You can probably see this most easily by looking at one of the most popular meme coin platforms out there called pump.fun. It's basically a cesspool of speculation, manipulation, and even like live streams of some pretty messed up stuff. Of course, I can't force you to not do anything, but if you are going to engage with the things like what is available on these types of platforms, just be aware of what the incentives are. The point is to engage you in a spectacle and take your money. And so for your own mental health, just be aware that you don't have to defend everything in the crypto world simply because you take an interest in it. If someone comes to you with criticisms about crypto, probably worth acknowledging. And so I would say focus your time on efforts on projects that align with your values and do the things that you are interested in doing with the technology. Also feel free to disavow things that should be. Capitalism has been a much larger and greater scam well before crypto ever existed. Heuristic number 3. Stay away from algorithmic stablecoins. Stablecoins are hot right now, which is kind of funny for an industry that's known for highly volatile assets, because stablecoins are simply cryptocurrencies that are pegged to the value of something else. Most likely, it's in the context of a cryptocurrency that is pegged to the price of the US dollar in some way, shape, or form. They're pretty useful for traders to go in and out of assets that are more volatile, and they're also good for remittances and sending money across borders without needing to pay large fees to banks or things like Western Union. They are, however, effectively private dollars. So it's important to understand the different types and what risks come with using them. So most legitimate stablecoins are backed by some reserve of real assets. That could be real cash in the bank, it can be treasury bills or bonds, it could be gold in a safe somewhere, it could be a lot of different things. These ones aren't necessarily perfect, but it does mean that there is a kind of insurance for the cryptocurrency if the price were to drop suddenly due to external market conditions. Algorithmic stablecoins, however, have no real assets backing them necessarily. Sometimes they can be mixed, but what they do is they use some sort of economic incentive to kind of peg the price to an asset. I don't think it's necessarily needed to go into the exact details on how this can happen, but it's important to understand that this is what caused the 2022 crash of the Luna Terra stablecoin and blockchain, in which $60 billion of value were completely wiped out because there were no assets fundamentally that were upholding the value of the stablecoins, thus starting a downward spiral whenever confidence was lost. And so, because people often forget history, I thought this was an important point to bring up to remind ourselves to avoid algorithmic stablecoins. Heuristic number 4. It's not all about Bitcoin. If someone is critiquing the crypto or Web3 world, and in that piece of writing, they only mention Bitcoin, then they don't know what they're talking about. Bitcoin was the first and is the most well-known cryptocurrency in the world, probably, but it's only a fraction of the whole story. And so only critiquing Bitcoin means that someone has not really done their homework. Most of what people call Web3 happens on a blockchain called Ethereum, or you could extend that to other new ones like Solana and a whole list of others. If someone says Web3, in reality, it does not actually mean Bitcoin for the most part. In fact, most people who are Bitcoin maximalists, or people who only like Bitcoin as far as the cryptocurrency world is concerned, actually hate the term Web3. And they hate Ethereum or these other similar blockchains. They see them as an unnecessary complication to the narrative of digital gold that Bitcoin follows. So what's the difference? Bitcoin and Ethereum serve slightly different purposes and have different ecosystems. The short explanation is that Ethereum can do a lot more things thanks to its smart contract functionality, which Bitcoin doesn't really have in a native form. That makes the Ethereum community a little bit more diverse in terms of the types of beliefs that the people hold and also consider themselves as part of the community, whereas Bitcoin tends to be a little bit more homogeneous. And so if you're going to criticize the crypto industry as a whole, it would make sense to extend your understanding beyond just Bitcoin rather than making broad strokes that go across different ecosystems. It's like if you wanted to write a criticism about social media, but the only platform that you actually talk about is Facebook. It's basically missing the forest for the trees. This doesn't mean that every criticism is wrong, of course. It just means if that does happen, to take a deeper look. Heuristic number 5. Not all critics are equal. In my experience generally, criticisms of the crypto world tend to be several months behind. This isn't entirely a bad thing, but it's something to recognize. The crypto space moves incredibly fast. New protocols are launched, then failed, and made again in a matter of weeks or months. Whereas academic papers can take a lot longer than that. And so by the time that some sort of criticism is published, oftentimes the rest of the industry is already somewhere else. I think the reason why this largely is that there seems to be little awareness to the actual conversations that are happening in the blockchain space that are going to determine the development of that technology amongst an organized left. There have been so many contentious technical decisions on the development of various blockchains and protocols that have a political dimension to them. Many of the decisions that were made technically on Ethereum, for example, like any other protocol, have political assumptions embedded in them because all technology have some sort of political or economic assumption embedded in them. In my view, a constructive criticism coming from the left could be, or really would be, very useful in the conversations in the crypto space. And I do think that this is something important to build towards, as it can affect the direction of the progression of technology in a way that maybe could lead to some of the better outcomes that we're hoping for. Now, of course, there is value in having an outside perspective. Being inside the crypto bubble for too long can make you disconnected from the material world. However, there's also a lot of value to be had on having a perspective from the inside in which things are happening. I honestly think that it is an important political act to help shape technical standards when it comes to any technology. And this should be part of some portion of the left to understand these things and give recommendations. For now, though, however, these voices are largely absent. I try my best when I can, and I go out and speak at conferences, but I could certainly use the help. So the question to me isn't about whether the left should be inside or outside of crypto, but how it can effectively do both. Look, I get it. Crypto can be exhausting. There's a lot of noise to cut through. But hopefully these heuristics will help you navigate the space a little bit better. And remember that you don't have to do this alone. We have several online communities called Crypto Leftists, including a subreddit, a Discord server, and even a channel on Farcaster, if you're familiar with that, where you can meet others and discuss these types of topics. You can find links to all those communities in the show notes. The goal isn't to become a crypto maximalist. It is instead to be able to have the ability to think critically about crypto, as well as all the emerging technologies that are around it, and to be able to understand how they can be used to accomplish the specific political goals that maybe you are interested in your context. If we don't engage with this space critically and thoughtfully, then we're leaving it entirely to people who don't hold our values. Let me know in the comments if this was helpful, and consider subscribing, since I make a lot of content exploring decentralized technologies from a left-wing perspective. If you like what I'm doing here, consider supporting the show on Patreon. Your contributions help me keep doing this work and dive deeper into the politics of decentralized technologies. I promise you absolutely zero financial returns, no airdrops, and your investment may go to zero. But you will get good content. Check out patreon.com/theblockchainsocialist to support the show.